Hello, it's a pleasure and an honour to have the opportunity to talk to you in the context of this year's Alumni Day of Action with its focus on social justice. My name is Kate Chedgzoy. I teach and research in the School of English Literature, Language and Linguistics, and I'm Director of Equality, Diversity and Inclusion for the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences. Asking what universities can do to foster social justice and working with colleagues and students to make both the institution and the world it inhabits more just and inclusive are key to everything I do in my job. I've been asked to focus in this talk on gender and sexuality, and I will, but for me they can't be disentangled from the other themes that this year's Alumni Day of Action addresses. To quote the much missed African American lesbian poet and cancer survivor Audre Lorde, "There is no such thing as a single issue struggle, because we do not lead single issue lives." Audre Lorde saw poetry as a resource for struggles for social justice and also as a source of beauty and pleasure. She didn't see the political and the aesthetic as in tension with each other, as competing priorities we have to choose between, but rather as intertwined and mutually supportive. The study of literature becomes richer and its potential for impact stronger when we draw on Audre Lorde's insight, attend the multiple experiences and influences that shape people's lives in the past and present, take an intersectional feminist approach to the study of literature and culture, and recognise how in doing all of those things we can deepen our understanding of social justice and draw on literature to sustain us in working for it. I'm going to explore how that works in practice for me by talking about two different facets of my recent work. First, a research-informed final year module I taught this spring called Other Renaissances, Gender, Race and Sexuality in Early Modern Culture, and then the work that I'm doing in collaboration with a number of colleagues and with students with Open Clasp, a feminist theatre company based in Newcastle. Other Renaissances was designed to challenge a perception among some students that the Renaissance was the province of dead white elite males, and that consequently there's something inherently conservative about researching, teaching and studying it. I wanted to bring into the classroom the 20 plus years of research I've done that contributes to a different view of the Renaissance, a more complex, multifaceted one that recognises how women, people from racialised minorities, non-elite people and even children participated in shaping Renaissance culture. Feedback on the module consistently demonstrates that students are actually wonderfully open to having their preconceptions about the period challenged and to engaging with Renaissance literature in ways that make sense to them. The single most frequent feedback comment I get goes something like, "This module was really challenging and I loved it." On the module, we read some poetry, we read a lot of critical scholarship that helps students understand how their developing views are part of an ongoing international conversation among students, scholars, creative writers, makers of theatre, and a wider public to whom the Renaissance remains a meaningful and important historical period and cultural concept. Mainly though, we focus on plays, perhaps the most significant single cultural form in which the Renaissance remains alive today. We work to understand them both in the moment that produced them and in their continuing, constantly changing life on stage, and perhaps increasingly, as we've seen over the last year or so, on screen, whether in film versions or in some of the kind of Zoom type productions that have kept theatre alive and giving it new opportunities to develop into transformed life forms during the pandemic. I'm going to give one example of how all of this plays out in practice within the context of Other Renaissances. About halfway through the module, in consecutive weeks, we juxtaposed Shakespeare's play Antony and Cleopatra with Elizabeth Carey's play The Tragedy of Mariam, Fair Queen of Jewry. Both these plays were written in the years immediately following the death of Queen Elizabeth I. It's not clear which play was written first, or whether these two prolific authors, both highly respected in their own time, knew each other's work. Two plays, both with female protagonists, set in different parts of the Roman Empire at around the same moment in history. Plays that use their exotic locations to explore ideas about female beauty and desirability, female power and agency, about cultural, ethnic and racial differences, and about the tensions and conflicts that a powerful woman in a patriarchal world has to navigate. One of these plays was written for performance by men and boys on the commercial stage in London, one probably written to be read aloud and discussed by a mixed group of men and women in Carey's household. At the heart of Shakespeare's play is an idealised, romanticised and ultimately doomed heterosexual love affair between Antony and Cleopatra. At the heart of Carey's is her heroine Mariam's ethical resistance to the power exercised over her by her tyrannical husband Herod, a resistance which ultimately is also doomed. Both of these plays are tragedies. The historical Cleopatra, central to Shakespeare's play, is a significant absent presence in Carey's, in the tragedy of Mariam. In that play, Alexandra, mother to the protagonist Mariam, celebrates her daughter's emphatically white, or as the play insistently calls it, fair beauty, by contrasting her to Cleopatra's famous, but also problematically racialised charms. So we know, for example, that Shakespeare has Cleopatra describe herself as being with Phoebus amorous pinches black, burnt by the sun, darkened in a way that people in the early 17th century believed could actually be the origin of racialised blackness, a burning by the sun. But her blackness, her darkness is a sign of love and beauty rather than of the ugliness that was conventionally then associated with it. Mariam, however, as a play, invokes a more ambivalent presentation of Cleopatra's darkness. Alexandra laments that she never succeeded in arranging a marriage between her daughter Mariam and Antony. If Antony had ever had the chance to meet Mariam, she suggests, he would have loved thee and thee alone and left the brown Egyptian clean forsaken. Clearly he would have found Mariam's fair beauty more alluring than Cleopatra's darkness, is what Alexandra thinks. Elsewhere in the play, Mariam herself claims that her integrity of character, her virtue, enables her to triumph over false Cleopatra in the competition for Herod's love, her goodness and fairness outdoing the wanton queen's smooth deceit. Quoting Mariam's lines there. Dark-skinned, then, in both plays, foreign in both plays, untrustworthy in both plays, and excessively sexual, with Phoebus amorous pinches black, or in Carey's word, wanton, Cleopatra is repeatedly contrasted to Carey's virtuous heroine in language that is both sexualised and racialised. Students found it fascinating to explore how this intersection of race with gender and sexuality shapes Carey's depictions of all her female characters, not just Cleopatra. Mariam, for example, is contrasted not only with the Egyptian queen, but also with her own sister-in-law, Salome, Herod's sister, a woman who refuses her subjection within patriarchal culture, demands release from an unhappy marriage, and declares, "I'll be the custom breaker and show my sex the way to freedom's door." This seems like a ringing feminist call to arms, but actually in the play, Salome is rhetorically punished for this transgressive behaviour by being described by her brother Herod as a sunburnt blackamoor and told that next to Mariam, she could be taken for an ape, a racist use of animal imagery that unfortunately remains all too familiar. And just as we've seen men in public life abused with such language recently, in Carey's play too, racially charged rhetoric is used of men, not only women. Salome wants to get divorced in order to be with her Arabian lover, Silaus. And as one student brilliantly argued in their essay, when Salome speaks to or about Silaus, her language portrays, to quote the student, an othering, fetishising attitude towards her lover that reduces him to his skin colour and national identity, and as the object of her gaze upon him. He becomes a racialised object of her desire." End quote. By tracing the complexities of race, nationality, sexuality and gender as they emerged in this fascinating play by a Jacobean woman, students gained insights that they will take with them as they embark on careers in teaching, PR, law, digital communications and many other sectors. Insights that will enable them to go out of the university and work in an informed, confident way for social justice, wherever they find themselves. One of the things that I love about teaching is that those students' insights, their demands that we show what we do matters in the world as it is, that they always energise and feed back into my research. And although I've been talking about a dialogue with students around the culture of some 400 years ago, I've found the challenges and the fresh perspectives that they've shared with me hugely valuable in my work with Open Clasp Theatre Company, a very contemporary organisation active right now in the city of Newcastle, but making work that reaches far beyond the northeast. Open Clasp make exciting, moving theatre for social change. It's grounded in participatory work with women and girls whose lives are shaped by their gender as it intersects with class, poverty, race, sexuality, refugee and asylum seeking status, and very frequently with experiences of domestic violence and the criminal justice system. The company is based in the West End Women and Girls Centre in Elsick, which you may recall is a socio-economically deprived area of Newcastle with a very diverse population. As the crow flies, it's not far from the university. Culturally, it's a world away. A little while ago, Katrina McHugh, the artistic director of Open Clasp, approached the School of English to ask whether we would be interested in working with the company to ensure a secure, accessible, long-term home for their archive, and to explore how it could be developed as a resource that would share the company's work with a wide range of users. This invitation chimed in so many ways with our commitment to engaging with the cultural life of the city, as well as our values around social justice, that we were delighted to say yes. Our collaboration so far with the company has taken many forms. Students have gone into the company's office to map the archive. They rummaged among boxes in the attic of the West End Women and Girls Centre, brought them down to list their contents meticulously, and pored over creative notebooks, production feedback, funding applications and touring schedules held in desk drawers and cupboards to give us insights into the amazingly rich extent and scope of the material held in the archive. At the same time, they've built relationships with the Open Clasp team and gained rich insights into what it takes to make imaginative, original theatre that contributes to social justice in a challenging environment. As a result of the students' hard work, we were able to host an event in the summer of 2019 that brought together women whose stories the company has told, with artistic collaborators, theatre practitioners and academics from all around the UK and beyond, to showcase material from the archive, celebrate everything Open Clasp have achieved, and plan how to make the archive accessible so that it can be used to generate and sustain creative activities and ongoing work for social justice. At that event in the summer of 2019, we screened the first version of a short film called Traces in the Script, made by my School of English colleague Dr. Kate Sweeney, which draws on material in the archive linked to one particular production, Don't Forget the Birds, first staged in 2018. Kate's film gives mother and daughter performers Abigail and Cheryl Byron a platform to discuss their experiences of making and performing in Don't Forget the Birds, a deeply moving play that explores the impact on their lives of time that Cheryl spent in prison. As working class women of colour, Cheryl and Abigail represent many women whose voices have not been heard enough in theatrical culture, whose stories have not been told often enough. Open Clasp is committed to working with women like them in order to tell their stories and to give audiences the opportunity to listen to and be moved by a wide range of voices. We're proud to collaborate with them to explore how the company's archive can bring their work to new audiences. To conclude then, I've spoken about two areas of my work that are very different in terms of materials and methods. What unites them is a key question that's energised my whole research career. How do people who are culturally marginalised, structurally excluded from the means of cultural production, find ways of overcoming that inclusion and seizing forms of cultural authority in order to find their voice and tell their story? It's a question that's important to me personally, as somebody who grew up female and queer in a working class community in post-industrial South Wales. I didn't grow up expecting to have any cultural authority or for my voice to be heard anywhere much. I'm very grateful for the opportunities that my job at Newcastle University gives me to use that voice now to work for social justice. Thank you very much for listening to me today.